Blue skies, everybody. Welcome back to the How to Find Amelia Earhart podcast. I'm your host, Amelia Rose Earhart. On today's show, we're chatting with Spence King. He is our operations manager at Nauticos, and he's going to really tell us all about ship life while we're out there in the South Pacific Ocean near Howland Island on our next search for Amelia Earhart's plane. So you're going to learn so much from Spence. He's got years and years of experience in all sorts of fields, and it's really exciting to get to see just the sophistication of the search that takes place in the next search. And, they've been doing this for 30 years. So check out this conversation. And if you want to learn more about Nauticos or get in touch, you can head to our website, nauticos.com, or send us an email at info@nauticos.com. Thanks for watching, and blue skies. Well, today on the show, we are chatting with Spence King, who is the Nauticos operations manager. Spence, it's so great to chat with you today.
Yeah, Amelia, thank you for having me on your podcast.
Boy, what a big topic we're diving into, right? We're at the early side of planning our next Nauticos mission to go and search for Amelia's plane out in the South Pacific. To kick things off, I want the audience to get to know all the Nauticos team members as I'm getting to know you all simultaneously, in addition to our weekly meetings that we have. But this one-on-one conversation is really meant to get to know who you are and why you care so much about this project. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're all about?
Okay. Thank you. Yes. My name is Spencer King. I have been associated with Nauticos for over 25 years, and I've served in any capacity that was needed. So I've been everything from a deckhand to the operations manager. And before that, I came from a military background. I'm Navy. I did 21 years in the Navy, mostly on surface ships, and mostly on salvage ships. So our business in the military was we're always looking underwater for things, usually things the Navy drops and it falls off the ships like helicopters and anchors and things. So that was always an interesting part of my career. We did a lot of diving and interesting things that involved underwater. Following my time in the Navy, I didn't have enough of the ocean, so I got my commercial license and I became a cruise ship captain. So I worked on cruise ships on basically domestic East Coast routes. So from Maine to Texas, doing cruise expeditions. And then simultaneously with that, I was involved with Nauticos, and I worked mostly in new business development. But as Nauticos was standing up on its feet, it was growing at a rapid pace, and they started having opportunities to go to sea. And I was interested in that. And Dave Jordan's concept of going to sea was different than anything I'd seen before. He very much was a proponent of collaboration, and everybody on the team was somewhat unique. Some of them had never even been on a ship before, but the reason they're there is they bring a different perspective to the problems that we all look at. So I found that we're going to sea with the office workers and people that had no other connection to the ocean other than they work for an ocean company. So a lot of the team members were software engineers, they're computer people, they're analysts and various things. A lot of them just worked in offices before this, but you put them on a ship and it's a different environment.
So I'm curious about that environment, Spence, because you, with all of your years in the Navy, and like you said, you wanted to get back out to the ocean. I'm not really an ocean person. I'm more of a sky person. I want to be up in the airplane. I'm kind of afraid of the ocean. What would you give advice-wise for someone who's coming out for the first time, or maybe some advice you give to other team members?
You are no different than many of the crew members that we have taken to sea.
Okay.
So in some of the early missions, I kind of recognized that we're taking people and putting them in it's inherently dangerous environment out there. Ships have you can not recognize danger just staring you right in the face, and so we wanted to basically make sure we keep everybody safe. So we invented something called Sea School, SEA School. And so it was something for everybody in the crew, but especially those that weren't familiar with ships. So we had a curriculum. It was very loose. It morphed every day into something. But we had a core part of that school was safety. So we wanted to get our new people, number one, teach them how to get around a ship, how they're laid out, how they're numbered, how to get from the pointy end to the back end. And we taught them about electricity on ships. It's a little different than the stuff in your house. Falling overboard, fires at sea, flooding, collision, medical emergencies, all this stuff that you might encounter. So you can be comfortable that you're a full and well-informed crew member. You know what to do in any emergency. So, and then another part of the Sea School was we talked about our mission. A lot of people weren't familiar with all the work that's gone into why are we looking where we're looking, what the equipment is that we're using, what it can do, how to sit in front of a sonar monitor, and what things look like underwater. It was that was quite informative, and some members of our team are world-renowned experts in sonar and interpretation and doing underwater searches. So we're learning really from the experts. The other thing we did was we drew parts of the Amelia Earhart story into our daily life.
Yeah.
So every single member of our team could go out with a sextant and shoot a sun line and plot it on a chart.
Wow.
Everyone. And we made that a priority. We navigated. The ship didn't depend on us for their position, but every single day we navigated. We went out and shot the sun, moon, and stars, plotted them on a chart, and compared it to GPS, which was always handy. But we made that one of the founding principles, so that we kept close to the problems that Earhart and Noonan had to face. So that was a big part of our education. And then we had.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the final component was we had some fun stuff, and this is where, well, not everybody's an expert in sonar, but we made fun of the engineers because whenever they can't fix something, you get duct tape and you get tie wraps, and so we had a class on making things out of duct tape and tie wraps. I taught my own class on tying fancy knots, the nautical art type stuff. So anyway, we had fun with it, and it kind of stuck. So we that's what we do when we go to sea.
It sounds fun. It sounds like a big, group of friends or family out there, because when you are doing a big project like this that takes years to bring to life, and then you're in a high stakes environment where it's very serious, but you're also far from home, so you need that comfort. So it sounds like those daily activities, like you said, from Sea School to using the sextant and charting your location, those sorts of things you could count on every day probably felt good for the crew. Is that right?
Yeah. And another important thing we did was on these kinds of missions, there's really three employers involved. The ship owner, all the ship's crew all work for the ship owner, and they have their priorities and their operating procedures. We also have a contractor who brings, usually they bring the sonars and the underwater vehicles, and there's another team of contractors on the vessel. And then our group we're called the charters or the science party, and we are watchstanders, and everybody is working for us eventually, but there tended to be little cliques or unions of people. And before the ship left the dock, we tried to break down all those barriers, and we involved the ship's crew, and we invited them to our meetings, and we went to their meetings, and we sometimes they had maybe an engineering problem or an electronic problem that they didn't have anybody able to understand what was wrong, and we could lend some of our engineers to maybe help the ship get something fixed. And it goes the other way too. We had a lot of diesel mechanics, hydraulics on deck, and they had some engineers that were quite, experienced in that. So we just wanted everything to flow such that once the ship leaves the dock, there's just one team, and there's one mission, and there's one goal, and that's to find that airplane.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what's made it for me as the newest member of the group to join, because I see how you all interact with one another, and it's very respectful. It's very equal, right? There doesn't seem to be a hierarchy from top to bottom. And I'm sure that naturally those hierarchies form when you're really out on the ship, but it's a really interesting group to join. From my perspective as a pilot, coming in and saying, I know nothing, but I want to help get you guys back out to sea. I want to get us back out there. So it's been opening up different parts of my brain about what types of adventures now I'll be heading into outside of the airplane, right? Connected to Amelia, but out at sea. So I can't wait to grow out there and learn all this stuff from you. So I'll be picking your brain both here on the podcast and in person, Spence. So let's zoom out a little bit for our listeners. Tell us where we're at in 2025 and set the scene for what Nauticos is hoping to accomplish over the next year or so as we prep for our next mission, before we get into the details of why we're going with our new data.
Okay, well, Nauticos has been to sea 3 times in search for Earhart's airplane. Every one of those missions was the last mission, because we felt we had a searchable area. We had the ability to search to a degree of certainty that there's no possibility that we could have imaged the airplane and not recognized it. So in other words, it was very meticulous, very disciplined in that there's no holes in the map. Everything was covered, and there is no possibility that the plane is there. So every time we go out, we take that piece of pie and say, we don't need to go there again because we've been there. So there's a finite area to search. And it started with Elgin Long's theory. He brought to Nauticos a 6,000 square mile box. He says, the plane's in here. And Nauticos has since spent years and years and years trying to get that box down to an area that's searchable. And to date, I think they've searched about 3,500 square miles. And we still haven't imaged the airplane. We've had many, many contacts, but we haven't found the aircraft. And you could say, well, we're already half done, but we always search the highest probabilities, the highest probability of success first, and as you get away from the center of interest, the probabilities go down, and we reserve those for last. But after the second mission, we started questioning our own assumptions, because we don't have all the information that we need to just go out and find it. Otherwise, it'd take one mission and we take one day. So yeah, it's very difficult to challenge your well established assumptions,
Yeah.
and we've done that with introducing the. We did a radio study of signal strength of Earhart's radio signals. This work was done by some radio engineers from Rockwell Collins. They've been with our team for the entire length of as long as we've been looking for this airplane. And as we've been eliminating areas, they were developing ways to quantify the radio strength with distance. And there was a receiver on the Coast Guard ship Itasca near Howland Island. The transmitter was in Earhart's plane. And listeners of her radio transmissions on the Itasca wrote down the time of the transmission, they wrote down what was said, and they wrote down a signal strength for every single time a message was received. And as the plane approaches Howland Island, the signal is getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and finally strongest. And then the last transmission was less strong. So what was presumed is Earhart was approaching Howland Island, as we all expect. She got so close that the highest signal strength they can write down is a 5. Well, they wrote down 5+ because it was strong. And so it's very persuasive that it's strong enough that she was very close to Howland Island, but far enough away that she could not see it visually. So it's a small, it's actually a tire, a donut of where you could be. Close enough, but too far away to see. So that's what they tried to do is quantify what's that distance, what's the minimum distance and the maximum distance she could have been when that radio strength was the strongest. And from there was another 40 minutes of fuel where she could have flown, but she told us what she was doing. They were flying on a certain heading, this way and that way. Finally, they were circling. There was a time where they acknowledged that the Itasca had sent them a signal, and she acknowledged it, meaning she received that signal. And so we don't know exactly what she did in the last 40 minutes, and that's the puzzle.
Yeah. And the perspective of Howland Island in the middle of the South Pacific, essentially near the equator, when I describe it to people, I say kind of halfway between Papua New Guinea and Hawaii, approximately. The reason she couldn't see it, even though she was, quote unquote, so close, was because the top elevation on Howland Island is it's only a few feet. So it's not like she would see some big landmass in the distance. The other thing is the clouds that tend to form over that part of the ocean and in Howland can be these sort of low-level popcorn clouds that visually your eye might perceive as land or vice versa. Is that correct?
Well, you tell me. I've spent my life on the ocean, but when you're above the ocean and the sun casts a shadow on a cloud and that shadow is cast onto the ocean,
yeah,
I believe those look like dark marks, and they could be islands. And the only difference between the shadow of a cloud and an island is islands typically have a little white ring around it. That's the waves crashing on the beach. But otherwise, they look like little dark spots.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that from when I was flying at 27,000 feet, no controllers would let us descend anywhere below 27,000 because altitude is your friend, right? You want as much altitude as possible in case anything goes wrong. so that you can glide as long as possible. Well, from up there, even at 27,000 feet, when we were approaching Howland Island after departing from Leh, where Amelia departed from 77 years ago, even I, with this GPS and synthetic vision and all the modern day technology in the Pilatus PC-12, still could not see where that island was until we were visually referencing it on the GPS and with our eyes. That's how much confusion there was. So,
Yeah.
and we were flying in broad daylight. It was mid-afternoon, so totally different environment. So I think when people talk about Amelia's skill as a pilot, sometimes people go, oh, she wasn't that great. She didn't know what she was doing. To make it this far around the world in 1937, to the point where she was departing Papua New Guinea and heading to Howland, was exceptional. So I like to argue with that, because she was really putting herself out there in a risky situation, because there's nothing else out there. I mean, her bravery is something that really stands out to me. Do you feel that way as well, or what's your take on Amelia and what she was really going after here when she was daring something so great?
Well, I want to back up for 1 minute.
Sure.
We've looked at the geometry of the Electra, and certainly when it's sitting on the ground, the nose is up. I mean, you can't see forward very well at all. And when it's level and flying, the visibility forward is average, but as you go to the side, the wing obstructs a large part of the ocean below.
Mm-hmm.
There was basically a small wedge that Amelia could see, maybe 60 or 70 degrees of ocean forward and out the left side of the plane. Yeah. And if Noonan wasn't in the right seat, the island could have been going down the right side. She'd never see it.
Oh, wow.
And
yeah, she could have been so close.
And the other thing, this is another one of our assumptions, is she and Noonan were in this noisy airplane for 18 hours, and now they needed all their wits and their skill to find this island. And we concluded that they were exhausted. They weren't as sharp as they needed to be.
Yeah.
There might have been errors, but just it was just an incredible human task to find this island, and they needed more than they had. It was just
yeah.
There's a lot of,
they were
I think
doing.
There's probably some anxiety over fuel and operating the radio, flying the plane, looking out the window. All of this stuff was on Earhart, and she was probably overwhelmed.
Yeah, the human factor side of things in any big journey you take is going to factor in, especially when you're that far into your trip. So when you mentioned the radio testing and the radio that was recreated by the Collins Radio Group and the engineers there, Rod and Tom, who are also members of the Nauticos team, and many others from the Collins Group that are still involved with Nauticos, when you were able to recreate Amelia's radio equipment to really start to hone in on where Amelia and Fred could have been in their final moments, Nauticos now knows where Amelia was at 8 a.m. on the day of her disappearance. So tell us why that's important to our next search.
Well, as I mentioned, from there, they attribute maybe 40 more minutes of flight before she would be out of fuel. It eliminates a lot of other theories that she flew 360 miles to another island. There's plenty to go around, but that's why we are confident that the plane went down in the ocean, and that's where it'll be found, is the most likely theory. So the bottom line is all the assumptions that we could possibly make are really not very valuable, because we don't know exactly what she did in those 40 minutes. So she's flying at 115 miles an hour. She can go quite a ways in 40 minutes. but we know kind of what she told us what she was doing, so we can eliminate a lot of things. But this putting a number on how close she was to the island helps us tighten up the area where we have to search. That's why it's important.
Yeah, it's interesting that it does eliminate, with this new data, it does eliminate a lot of the other theories. When Nauticos first announced this radio test and what you had identified, was there pushback from the other searchers that are out there looking for Amelia?
Well, I think there's pushback on everything the other groups do.
Yeah.
The team called Tigar, they're adamant that Amelia Earhart landed on another island and lived as a castaway and died on that island, and they've been looking for artifacts for decades. And they find junk, and when you're looking for a woman's shoe, you find a woman's shoe. And the one thing about that group is on that island, about 5 miles away, is a shipwreck, and it's the SS Norwich, and it had run aground about 5 miles or 5 years before Earhart's flight, and so stuff from that ship could easily end up on the beach, and that's where you might find a woman's heel, and you might find some freckle cream, and you might find a piece of aluminum, but it's not Earhart's plane.
When you are working with a group of really bold researchers who are going off of scientific data and what could have been possible, right, by the numbers, that's what makes me excited to join Nauticos, right? It's not a wild theory to say, maybe she's here, maybe she's here. That would be much harder to join. With Nauticos, you guys are really focused on the data. Talk a little bit about just that mentality and why it matters to this process, and maybe the confidence of going back out, especially on this trip with the new radio information.
Well, the technology that we use to find things underwater was practiced, and it was developed and practiced by Nauticos for government customers. And we found that we could apply underwater navigation to other scenarios, such as Amelia Earhart. So it's called Kalman filtering, and it's a complex statistical algorithm which with many variables. And so Dave Jordan's a practitioner of this. He's used it many times to find other objects underwater, and it's shockingly accurate. But you have to understand the equipment that you use, the inherent errors in the readings of this equipment, and then the error propagation growth. So over time, a small error can widen and get bigger and bigger. So that's the methodology of how we locate things underwater.
Mm-hmm.
So we've used multiple different statistical maps and Monte Carlo simulations, ReNav, which is the Dave Jordan's process, and just dead reckoning, which is what pilots use. A compass for direction and throttle for speed. We've used all these methods to estimate, and each of these estimates, they kind of started landing on top of each other, and we gathered them all up, and it was lots of colors. It was interesting thing, and we all looked at it and said it looked like an Easter egg. So we called it the egg, and that was the basis of our initial. This is where we started our search. So we've searched most of the egg, and there's still plenty of areas around the egg, and some of them are closer to Howland Island that we felt comfortable looking, but this suggests that Earhart may have been closer to Howland Island than we originally thought.
And tell us about the underwater environment in the area where she and Fred could have gone down. How deep? Is there movement down there? What would the plane go through as it landed and sunk in any condition? There's so many variables here.
Okay. Well, we think Earhart would have flown the plane until the engine sputters, and then she's going to prepare to ditch, and the wheels are retracted. So we think, the airplane would be sputtering or dead as it's coming down. It's going to be a little bit nose heavy, and we've thought of maybe she couldn't keep the nose up because she's going too slow, but we're giving her credit for being an accomplished pilot that she could make a controlled landing. So we think the plane landed and most likely is intact. And then there's something we call the float theory. Is now it's a boat. How long can it float? Well, these tanks are all full of air, but all the tanks are vented, so they will fill with water. The fuselage itself is not pressure tight at all, so it's going to flood. And there are cases of other Electras landing in lakes and such that we have some data that these are not good boats. So I believe this sink time is about 12 minutes, but we hold out the possibility that maybe Earhart's plane could have floated for hours or even days. So we've looked at that, and that actually makes the search area grow, because now she would have drifted for quite a distance.
Mm-hmm.
So the bottom of the ocean is generally about 5,400 meters, about 18,000 feet, and it's usually kind of flat. There's a lot of mineral deposits down there, manganese and different things. They look like black pebbles, but generally it's kind of a flat bottom. And occasionally, just like Howland Island is a volcanic feature, there are numerous areas that have high volcanic action. So it didn't form an island. It didn't pop up through the ocean, but there's underwater seamounts. And some of these things have never been imaged before. If we're using a towed sonar, these things are obstacles, because we could drag our sonar right into the side of the seamount and it'll become a casualty of the sea. So when we are out there doing side scan sonar, the ship is ahead of the sonar, and the ship can image the bottom and see that the bottom is coming up, and they will call back to the sonar operators, and they'll have to reel in the sonar to make sure it comes off the bottom, so it clears this obstacle before we continue the search. So there are areas that we had to avoid because of seamounts. What they look like on sonar is they're very dense. They're rock, and they tend to be black. So they're large black areas. And the concern is if Earhart's plane went into a seamount, then we have a very special problem.
When you say in, do you mean in, like, since it's
if it just
or side
came down on top of a seamount somewhere,
okay,
on the side or top or anywhere near it, the plane is going to look like a dark image, and the background, the seamount, is going to be a dark image, and so dark on dark doesn't really show up, so it can hide in a seamount quite easily. And we've looked at this. I mean, I think the percentage of volcanic bottom is in the single digits. It's maybe 3 or 4%. So it's not a high likelihood, but it's more than zero that it could be in there. And if it were, that would be unfortunate. I think by eliminating all the searchable area, the only area left are seamounts. I guess you could, I would definitely search there last.
So when the underwater autonomous drones that will be taken out on the next trip that don't have a cable attached to the ship, they're moving on their own, would they be better equipped to search around the seamounts?
Yes. They are really, we've been going at this so long that the technology is just improved and made searching the ocean floor is much more efficient than it used to be. So in today's market, where we have basically smart robots, we tell them where to go, look, and we set up a navigation grid for them to navigate with, and you just roll them off the back of the ship and they go out and do their job and then come back and give you the data. So it's really wonderful technology.
Can you talk more specifically about those drones? Just out of sheer curiosity, what does one of those cost if someone were to try to buy one? Not that you would need one on your own, but what's the value of something like that?
Oh boy. Amelia, I'm not going to answer your question.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm in the business of renting these things. I've never bought one.
Yeah.
So,
No, I was just curious.
These are several $1 million.
Yeah.
Easily.
Okay. And the type of data that's sending back up, it's actually, and I don't want to simplify it too much, but is it some sort of like a SD card or something on board the drone that we would then take out and watch from the ship?
Exactly. Yep.
Wow.
The data is downloaded. I think they have a link. They just plug in and the data is pulled off the vehicle. And the turnaround of one of these vehicles is when you recover it is full of data and the battery is exhausted. So they replace the battery with a full battery. They take the data out and they plug in the new mission. They upload the coordinates of where to go next, and it's back in the water. And it's a matter of a couple hours. And
it's following a real precise grid. Is it based on latitude, longitude, or how does it know how, like, would the flow of the ocean push it off track or anything like that?
It's on the bottom of the ocean. We put down some transponders, and we precisely locate where the transponders are located, and the vehicle just knows, it just triangulates between the transponders, so it can fix itself exactly relative to the transponders. So they're not navigating with lat and long, it's just navigating distance to the transponders. So we call it mowing the lawn. Is these vehicles can see out a certain distance, so they go down these lines, they follow straight lines, and they sweep out an area that they have imaged, and then on the return trip they just translate over to the adjacent lane and sweep out the next lane. And then the data, we match bottom features to kind of stitch these two images together and make a map. So it's just a picture of the bottom, basically, when we're done.
And the quality of the images, I'm sure, has probably increased over the years, and especially what we're moving up to with these autonomous drones. Give us a sense, and I'll overlay this in the video as well, but give us a sense of what that looks like on screen and what your brain is trying to process. Does everything you look at look like Amelia's plane?
Well, sometimes it does. When you're looking at this is a pencil. And when you, it was sonar is kind of like a flashlight. If you shine your flashlight on this pencil, you're going to see a line. Okay. What if you turn the pencil this way? Now you shine a light on this, and it's a dot.
Yeah.
Which is it? Is it a line or a dot? Okay.
Oh.
So sonar is very interpretive. It can fool experts. That's why having two experts is better than one.
Mm-hmm.
And many times we send our most promising images to experts ashore that we have collaborated with and ask them for an opinion. And it takes a lot of experience to read this stuff. So what's it look like? Go to your living room wall and stare at the wall for 12 hours. And that's what it looks like.
I can't wait to go.
It's called a waterfall display, where every time the sonar pings, draws a line across the monitor. And these are about 1 per second. And this thing scrolls down very slowly until it's mind-numbing. That was the side scan sonar days, and we've come along quite a bit. But now when they download the data, they can get the imagery instantly. So it's a lot of data, and they scroll through it, a rapid review to see if there's anything in there, and then once they find something, they go back and take a closer look. So sonar is sonar. There's the physics of sonar create some problems, but also offer opportunities where we can measure things. If we understand the distance from the sonar to the object and the angle, we can basically use geometry to get take size measurements. And this was recently done with the other group that thought they had found the Electra in a place that was quite a ways from where they should have been. Our experts were collaborating with them, and they took those measurements and said it can't be the Electra. It's not the right size.
Yeah.
So an airplane can sometimes get smaller if maybe the wingtips break off or the tail falls off or something, but it can't get bigger than it should be. There's no way.
Yeah, that was a big part of that conversation. And I remember meeting the team, the Nauticos team, with some of the team from Tony's team as well, the search that we were speaking of. And they were talking about the refraction of light underwater, and that also could impact maybe the way things are viewed. Could we maybe see a shape of something that doesn't necessarily look like our eyes would perceive it above water, but underwater it could look quite different?
Yeah, it won't be light because it's way too deep for that.
I guess maybe the radar or the sonar return, could that be refracted?
I would say no.
Okay. I'll cut this part out.
Yeah.
I just remember Tony talking about something about how he was saying, well, the reason that it looked bigger or smaller, the shape was off, was because of the way that the water was like distorting how we were seeing it.
These distances are not very big. They're maybe 1,000 kilometers.
Okay.
So refraction of sound, I mean, the only thing that could change underwater is temperature. And at that depth, there's no way.
What is the temperature down there?
It's very cold. It's just above freezing.
Wow.
Maybe 33 degrees.
One of the questions I get from the kids a lot. So if you could maybe angle your answer towards the kids, maybe elementary school, junior high school kids who are learning about this. what's the bottom of the ocean floor like? Are there any sea creatures? What's the sand like? Is it dusty, and would it puff up when the plane landed and cover it up, or is it flat and hard? What's it like down there?
Well, it's generally flat, so we call it abyssal plain. It's there's no remarkable features, and it's formed by centuries of the biological changes going on above it, and debris and waste and whatever, calcified bones of fish sprinkle down like rain and settles softly on the bottom. Typically, there's no currents down there. There's no light down there. There's very little oxygen down there. So it tends to be pretty, just nothing changes very fast. Mm-hmm. And we like to think that it's a great place to store an airplane.
Perfect.
Because although the salt water will work its way into the metal of the plane, but that can be treated as we bring it back up through the water column. We basically can do preservation techniques to counter that. But yeah, we don't think the Electra is going to be highly corroded. There's not going to be a lot of marine growth. There's no barnacles, seaweed, none of that's down there. The paint will be on it. The aluminum should be shiny. So it'll be quite a spectacle.
Wow.
The reason the plane is so enticing is inside the plane is the contents of the essence of Amelia Earhart, whatever she was wearing, whatever tools she was using to make this flight. I am more interested in Fred Noonan because I'm a navigator, mm-hmm. and the paper that he exchanged with Earhart are in there. Those things can be recovered and restored and read, and we can put together the flight and the story of what actually happened. So yeah, that would be quite a discovery.
Yeah. I was chatting with someone the other day about our project and saying, hey, start thinking about people who might want to help support and sponsor and fund this trip. And his response back kind of shocked me. He said, I appreciate what you're doing, but why does anybody, or why should anyone care where this plane is? He said, I'm kind of asking you the so what question. So what? We found Amelia's plane. I think for those of us who have an appreciation for ocean and air and airplanes and ships and all this, right? We have a natural interest to this, but why do you think the general public should care about us finding Amelia's plane, locating the plane, bringing it up and putting it in a museum somewhere for the world to see? Why do you think that's important?
Well, I think the American legacy in flight is missing an important piece of the puzzle, in that somewhere between the Wright brothers plane, which is preserved and displayed in the Smithsonian, and man landing on the moon, where the spacecraft are preserved and displayed in the Smithsonian. I think Earhart's plane deserves a place there, along with Lindbergh, and there are other pioneers of flight. It's a missing piece, and we'd love to put it in its rightful place for generations to come to understand and appreciate what she meant for aviation.
And I have to imagine as well, it could open up new avenues for understanding more about navigation and even just such a remote part of the world, right? Amelia was attempting something so bold and so daring back then. Today, we sort of take flying for granted. And with recent air incidents and things that have happened, I've noticed that people are talking more about flying and the safety of it. And as a pilot, of course, people ask questions about it. What does this mean? Or what could possibly happen? I like it because when we're thinking about closing the loop on Amelia's story, right, she's probably one of the most often mentioned famous pilots in history. When you think about famous pilots from history, Amelia Earhart's name will probably be included. The fact that we don't know that final result is why I want to go out and be a part of this mission, to get the world excited about it, the sheer mystery of it all. And to give up on it now just because it doesn't provide, I don't know, say a tangible benefit to everyone out there in the world. I don't know. I almost got offended when he asked, "So what? So what if you find the plane?" I thought, well, sometimes discovery for the sake of discovery is what it's about, because along the process, you're honing new skills, not only for yourself, but for the industry as well. So, yeah.
Well, I think Amelia Earhart had a contribution even bigger than her flying career, and she was one of the most renowned personalities in the world in her day. And she was a businesswoman, a philanthropist. She was active with charities and orphanages. And I liken her image is something like Lady Diana was, is just internationally beloved, and she was good and kind in so many ways. And I think that might be her biggest contribution in my mind, is not only her, she had an appetite for adventure, and she was a daring pilot, but that may not be what she's most endeared for.
Yeah, she was a very multifaceted woman. She did so many different things. Flying was a big part of her life, but it wasn't everything. And I like that comparison to Lady Di quite a bit, because she also had that air of mystery. She never let herself fully out there, had a tragic ending, and we want to know what happened. So I want to sort of help the world fall back in love with Amelia's story, fall in love with the Nauticos team and all the good-natured interest that's really around exploration and discovery and science, and getting a younger generation excited about stuff like this. So I'm thrilled to keep learning about all these details with you and the team. As we wrap it up here, I can't believe how fast these conversations go. As we think about the future, how, as we start fundraising, planning, getting excited about this, what kind of mood do you hope our exploration and announcement sort of evokes in people? For me, it's a lot of curiosity. I hope they're curious. I hope they're helpful. I hope they're supportive. What about you? What do you hope that the world will have to say back about us once we head back out there?
Well, this is, we've already had 3 swings and 3 misses, and they're probably going to ask us why this one. And I think the answer is we have been self-critical. We've explored what ideas that we thought were good may be challenged. We've developed this radio solution, which is unique. No one is. All the other methods, of navigation involve direction and distance and time. This approach is instead of a line of position, it's a ring of position. In other words, radio signals go out in circles, and once you establish how close you are, it's a circle, not a line. And where it intersects a line or any other method of navigation, it's a unique way of establishing a position. So I very early in my Navy career, I was a communications officer, and I wasn't actually a communicator myself, but I had these radio men working these HF radio sets, and these are old, crusty Navy sailors, and they could listen to a scratchy piece of radio signal And somewhere in there, there's a signal. It's either a voice or it's CW, Morse code. But it's incredibly, it's irritating. It hurts your ears. It's shrill. The radio background is hard, but they could pick these things out just because of years of training. And I've challenged our radio team to, there's only 5 signals. Faint and barely readable is S1, and loud and clear is S5, and everything in between is just the amount of static that's in there. Mm-hmm. And once you get to S5, and Earhart was there. I mean, they heard her loud and clear, and there's just you can't make a mistake there. And so we have basically quantified what that distance is. So that's the exciting news for us, is we now know exactly how close she was.
That's a really interesting component, because they wouldn't put down S5, and did they really write 5+, or was that insinuated?
They did.
They did. They would not write that down unless it was full clarity. They would have ranked it lower to make sure it was accurate. Is that the correct assumption?
So loud that people in the radio room went outside and looked at the sky because they thought she was right above them.
Wow.
So
wow.
It was, yeah. So
okay.
It's an intriguing mystery, a compelling story. It's a worthwhile endeavor. So we're in it.
Okay, last question, Spence. Do you think Nauticos will find Amelia Earhart's plane on the next mission?
Well, I've said yes every time people ask me.
I want to get a nice clean soundbite. Yes, we're going to find her.
Yes, we're going to find her.
Awesome. Well, Spence, thank you so much for this conversation. We're going to have many more as we continue to build towards the trip, but thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.